Hello. Welcome in, welcome in, welcome in. So today we're going to go through a bit of the more expressive type of programming. In previous videos that I've had, lives, shorts, all kinds of content that I've created, I've taught a lot about the 15%, the basic pieces that start up all programming. First, quick note, I'm going to have to keep my little GPU hotspot fan going because another video in the future is going to be me replacing my fan on my laptop because it decided to give out. It's an old laptop, I guess, 4 years. And living with a cat, well, you can imagine how many hairballs have passed through this fan. But it turns out my graphics card fan on my Nitro Acer decided to give out, so I'm being extremely observant of the temperature on my graphics card, just in case, I'm doing dual screen. Well, I'm projecting my screen, so that's not going to be too crazy. Not as much as dual screen, because then it has to actually render a whole new desktop. Here, I think I'll be fine. A little bit of a note. You're going to see this pop up once in a while. I'm just checking this number, making sure it's not going over 85, 89. You never want your graphics card to base, especially hotspots. You don't want them to base in the 90s. 90s is bad news bears. Okay, so based on previous videos, we've gone over a bit of the 15%. This is essentially the basic tool set of any programmer. Anyone looking to start programming, learn the first 15%. What language? There's a lot available. Does it matter? Not necessarily. As long as you understand the concepts in this 15%, it's the same in Python as it is in JavaScript, as it is in C++, as it is in Java. Small caveats when you go down to that sort of lower level of programming and the C++ and Java space. There's a little bit extra to learn based on types of variables, for instance, and memory allocation, which much more advanced than just basically starting to write some programs with a high level language that's essentially on top of everything else and manages everything for you. It doesn't care about the type of variable, it doesn't care about memory allocation. In our case, Python is going to be the focus, and Python manages everything for us. So, generally speaking, starting with the 15%, you may have gotten through that already, and you're like, all right, I'm ready to program. I know my loops, created silly tasks about managing an employee's work hours based on how much they've worked and how much they make per hour and blah, blah, blah. And I've made a whole interactive CRM type program in my Python. Where do I go from there? Where do I go to expand my Python skills? Well, after you learn the 15%, you're entering the 85. And as a general sense, it really depends on what you want to focus on, whether it will be application development, whether it will be game development, network topologies, server management, all kinds of different types of programming. But everyone eventually lands into GUIs, graphical user interfaces. This is where we create a type of interface that we can use our application from. So we don't have to constantly open up a terminal, type everything out, and have that be the main form of communication between us and the program. So in the aspect of GUIs, I'm personally not a professional. I'm more of a backend, a computer science guy. Everything that I know is sorting algorithms and creating efficient code in the backend, but never been one to be taught GUIs. We didn't really learn that in college, because obviously there's a lot of places we can go with that. Normally, when I teach my students, we go through JavaScript and how we manage GUIs in that area. And I'm talking JavaScript like HTML, right? HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. That, to me personally, is the easiest way to combine knowledge in programming to GUI management. Because in essence, a document, a web document, a web application, if you will, basically has all the tools in there, both graphical and mechanical backend. And you're able to essentially connect them directly within the same document. You don't have to make extras. You don't have to import anything. Everything's just right there ready to be connected. That's where I normally start. But because I do this all the time and I teach students with this, I decided to do something different because I'm tired of looking at JavaScript. So sue me. We're going to do Python based. It's one of the things I've been trying to get really to wrap around my head when it comes to creating applications with graphical interfaces. Now, I do normally, if I want to create something, I will also grab like a AI based template and then work on that template to customize it to what I want the application to do. But in the end, that's not even going to be helpful, at least in the sense of using AI as a crutch. But if you dig deeper into the code, as we will be learning from code, we're going to learn to code from code. We're going to be observing, looking, analyzing, and understanding how each line of a piece of code works for our own betterment, for us to be able to replicate these steps and be able to not only level up in our coding skills and levels and whatever, but also mm, understand how people, others, organize their code. Because from those that have created things for us already, I'd say they're pretty good. I'd say older code is probably way better than newer code. And if you're looking for ways to improve the way you write code, then I would say older vintage programs would probably be the best case because I feel like nowadays we're all lazy. We have so many overheads and everyone's working on a small piece of code, and the communication between proprietary software, especially, is very limited to having consistency in the code. But I love to look at people's code, see how they code, how they organize it, how they space things out, the order in which they do things. And then if I like certain techniques, I replicate them. I make them a part of my own tool set. And that's how we're going to approach this. This is the case for at any point in time, if you want to learn more about coding, how and where to start and do stuff, best case is open up GitHub. For this, we're going to look up the Python GUIs example mastering in GitHub. Believe it's from this guy. Yeah, PySide 6, demos, and there's the browser for us. I've already taken this down on my computer, and it's ready for analysis. So what are we working on? Well, we're going to take these examples, download them on our computer. You can go to the Python GUIs examples, root, code, and then download zip, throw it in your code folder. Make sure you have a code folder, just like I do, have a code folder. It has a lot of code types. Python, I've got data science, I've got R, 3D engines, JavaScript, Lua, Java, HTML, PHP, AI stuff, or AI slop, really, probably, I think. Yeah, AI code. This is me using AI to make some applications, then modifying them until I'm satisfied in the way they work, or fix them enough so they can actually work, because AI doesn't guarantee a working application, and so forth. So my coding folder is actually getting a little more unorganized down here. It's kind of annoying, but the idea is I save all my code, back them up, because it's one of the things that a programmer's tool set contains. It's the history of what you've done. This is kind of what GitHub attempted to do. We make a cool program, we go in GitHub, upload it, and then show off like a Facebook of coding. But in the end, your code is your code. The case is you want to make sure you keep your path because your path is your learning process, right? The outcome is only what's the word? A side effect of your learning process. So the first thing I will do is analyze. Let's take a look at the imports. So import OS, import SYS. These are typical Python imports, nothing special based on browser type applications. It's just us being able to communicate with the operating system, file management, and any sort of commands um, activation through the terminal. A lot of ways you can use these, but in most cases, in this case, we're essentially going to use them to store temporary files and essentially just organize our application based on giving it some access to its local folder for storage, cookies, things like this. Now, OS is going to change based on the OS you're running. So OS in here is a Windows machine, though it will change when you run this on a Mac or a Linux. So it's good to kind of keep an eye if you do use OS, use it in a more if on a Mac do this, if on Linux do this. Give it that ability to adjust to the operating system you're currently in. For now, this is just basically built on a Windows, so I haven't seen any issues. Then we go with PyQt 6. This is essentially a GUI for Python. It's a Qt-based user interface. Now, Qt is super lightweight. I've seen a lot of open source applications use Qt. Very great starting point for developers. You have other ways to access and create these as well. You can go with like Windows standards and essentially use that local GUI system. But personally, I don't see it as very customizable. And I like customizability. I like the ability to control my own code, and I'm able to essentially do the customizations I'd like to it. From PyQt 6, we have some classes, some objects we would like to import. Qt Core, Qt GUI, Qt Print Support, Qt WebEngine widgets, and Qt widgets. Each one of these contains specific classes that we can use within. Now, it's easier to look at this as more of like a folder structure. Basically, PyQt 6 in its main is literally a folder. It's a folder where the whole library resides. Inside of that folder, there is a Qt core extra bit there. What does that mean? That means it's a folder inside. With that Qt core folder inside of PyQt 6, it's either going to be a folder. In this case, the folder is actually PyQt 6. This is the file that contains code. And inside of that file, you have three classes, probably more, but you have QSize, Qt, and QURL. All of these will work together to create the web engine. Well, let's take a look at it and the way that does it work? Does it run? Is this actually a web browser? If I press my run on my Pylance, there it is. This is a test. I've already inputted some details, and we're basically created our own web engine. That's it. This whole piece of code, about 200 lines of code, 300? Yeah, call it 350. 350 lines of code, and we've created our own web engine. Now, web browser. The web engine is coming from the Qt interface. It's kind of built in. We saw this with the Qt Web Engine widgets and the actual QWebEngineView. This is, in essence, the same concept as like the Chrome driver, if you've ever heard of that. The Chrome driver is a piece of that software, Chrome, that uses the Chrome driver as an interpreter. It basically runs commands through the Chrome driver. What that means is that driver itself exists in many places, not just Chrome. You've got Chromium specifically for Linux. Oh, specifically as like not Linux, but a lot of the Linux users use it. Chromium is basically detached from Google Chrome. It's different. This is kind of like the original um, development environment before Chrome Google takes those features and publishes them to their browser. But the Chrome driver, in essence, acts as the interpreter of the internet. It reads the internet, the HTML, all the details in between. And then from there, we get our outcome, the browser. From our Qt Web Engine widget, we're going to grab our web browser or our web interpreter. And then you've got some widgets that come for the GUI itself, file dialogues, labels, and anything to basically decorate a browser. That's what these are for. Decorate with some functionality. Hello, Byteward. How's it going, buddy? Now, from here, we have the rest of the file. This is just the imports that we're going to be using to essentially grab our main functionality. And further forward, we're gonna collapse these classes to take a look at the overall. On line 249, we have if name double equals main. Double equals is a logical direct reference. Is it exactly the same as far as types, as far as value, and everything in between? And in this, yes, this main basically is a reference to how Python references itself as this file, this main.py file. So this is a variable that's built into the current Python system. Wherever it's running from, this changes. Whatever file we decide to activate, name changes. But if it's the first file that's being ran, it will automatically be given the name main. With the name main, we just check to see, hey, are you running this from the file itself? That's what it's asking here. So yes, I am running it from main.py. It doesn't have to be named the same. Keep that in mind. Main is a reference again to the first file that's running, regardless of the actual name itself. So if it's the first file running in our Python chain of activation, interpretation, then it's gonna run this right away. So from here, we activate our browser or application generally. No browser yet, but this is just how we begin activating the engine. We pass in sys.argv. Now, sys again came from that import at the very top, right? The sys import. And this helps us as we activate certain commands in the terminal slash command prompt. If we give extra attributes, inputs, then that would be the arguments that we will import. So let's say browser space tab T space tab U. Maybe tab T is for a new tab. Maybe tab U is for the URL. And then you press space and then you type in something like, so browser, like we would have to run this, unless we compile it, we would run this as Python browser, or at least in our case, main.py. Maybe we put in tab T for a new tab, tab U for URL. These will be the arguments, the argv. We're importing what are the extra values we're inputting to the command prompt. And this is specifically for system command prompts. So from here, that's the beginning. We create our application window and we pass whatever is running or whatever was inputted that activated this script, any extra arguments. So we have to take a look at what's going on here then. We've got the application name. It's just the attributes inside of our app that we're creating. The app object is being set up. We've got the first is launching that app from Q applications with the given arguments. Then we use a function, a method, inside of that object that will basically save the name of the application. Now we go to that place where main window is. So you can tell a couple of details here. First, some of these, like Q application and main window, are green. That's because these are functions activators, or in our case, classes being activated as objects, creating a new window from the class object or blueprint here. But we have this written. This main window is our own custom class. While QApplication doesn't exist anywhere in our documents, but it does exist in the imports. So that class exists in the Qt widgets of PyQt6. That's why we're importing it. We're bringing it over so we can use that blueprint so we can create our application. So keep a strong eye over what is custom code that we create in our document versus what is going to be imported code from that 85% space that we talk about continuously. Now, this just sets up the basic things about the window, the name, and all that jazz. Then we activate the actual window. So let's check the blueprint. Now, in here, I'm going to collapse the internal functions or methods, whatever you'd like to call them. Methods is obviously like the correct way to say it, but in the end, they function as a function. They just basically exist inside of a blueprint. So cool, good enough. So we start with the initiation. This first line on 56, this function init, is going to run immediately as we call main window on line 255. This is the path you want to understand. All applications run in this linear form. We have to just find the place something happens and then go to the next location that the code will go. Being able to track code, how it runs, is the way to read code and learn from the code you're watching or you're reading. You want to be able to follow from beginning to end the activation of the code as it goes. So on line 255, again, we go into main window class, which then basically teleports us up here to the first time we run main window, and it creates the initiation, or it runs the initiation method. Now, for Python specifically, these are class-based object references. Anytime you see self, this is kind of a necessity. If you come from C++ or JavaScript or others, you don't have to use this format. But if you're in Python, whenever you want to set up a method of a class and you want it to give it access to itself, you do have to import an argument for self. The self is a reference to the current activated object, which was window, this variable here. Anytime I talk about self, I'm talking about this window. And this window contains everything in main window. So literally everything we're about to go through is activated as an object inside of this variable. Literally the init, as it's the first thing that works, the title, the navigation, the about, the open file, the save HTML, all those bits and pieces exist now within this one little variable. That sort of understanding now tells us, well, if this window contains, this variable window contains all of that, we need to have a way to reference it. Some way to basically say, hey, I want to change the title of the window. Well, that would be a case for window and using a self value. Update title. Self would be a reference to the current running window. And we only have one variable right now. We can technically make two and make two browsers pop up. At that point, we can do this infinitively. So what's the point? The point is you don't have to worry about the extra details. One window to rule them all in our current situation, and the init will activate the process. So since this is the first method that runs, let's open it up and take a look. Now, we get into object-oriented programming, OOP. I know one of my viewers was asking some questions about it. Hope he's chilling and learning today, or he sees this later as a live that will be a VOD. But when we're dealing with blueprints, with classes, that's the first thing you want to think about. Just like a car has a blueprint of how it's created, and then we take that blueprint and we create 1,000 cars. When we say self, we're referencing to whichever car we're going to. So if we go to the red car, we want to self that open door, that's what's going to happen to that door specifically. In our case here, super is a reference to where it's coming from. Super would be, in this case, the Q main window import. When we have a class with a blueprint, we inherit some factors from the argument given in the class input. The argument is Q main window, and that's just giving us the main interactions of what a main window should have, like an X button, minimize, a maximize, all those kind of bits and pieces. That's the first thing. First thing is being able to, in this case, see inheritance from one class to another. And then we're going to say, all right, so they gave us a window, a main window, a Q main window to actually base our application from. Doesn't mean we have to use every single reference and structure of it, but it's a good start. That's why blueprints are customizable. It's basically like saying, my blueprints are going to use meters or feet as a base unit. When you use that connotation, you're standardizing your function method. But you're able to change it. You don't always have to use 30 feet for a specific room size. You can change the feet to whatever you want. So this is the same idea. We can change the attributes of the argument of what we're importing through the class. So super is a reference to let's activate the function init from the super import view main window. So just like any class, every single class is going to have an initiation function. As soon as we activate the class main window or our class main window, which will import the Q main window, from there, we're going to use the reference super as the inheritance above us, which is a Q main window. And we're going to activate a function called init that exists in there as well. And you'll see every function is going to have that init. Here's about dialog that has an init as well. That one's getting imported from Q dialog and that specific set of values. And then we just do super init again. So this is the consistency here. We activate a inherited class as the first self reference when we initiate this specific class that we're creating. So what are we really doing here? We're basically copying and pasting. Up to this point, just on the first lines of the super.init, it's the way we copy and paste from one class to another. We're setting it up, we're starting it off, we're initiating it, but as soon as we initiate, we just copy and paste from its upper super sibling, not sibling, that would be parent. There you go, parent. So we call that a parent, right? So this is the parent of about dialog, which would be the child. So the parent is Q dialog. It has everything set up. We're just activating the parent inside of the activated child. Give or take, copy and paste the stuff from the parent into the current child. And that's how we begin most of these inheritance forms. So self now is a reference to that window we spoke about. Self is going to be a reference to our window here. Everything we do in our init referencing self is going to modify this window variable internally without, not activating, not even doing anything on the outside. Because most students go to a coding level where they're really just functioning here. I mean, you can remove this and then go like this. It's going to do the same thing. But most programmers, especially college, high school, etc., they're really functioning about this space. Like the very left, one line after another code, linear down. Well, that would mean that we have to do adjustments from the outside. So for this, for instance, if I look at that self browser equals QWebEngineView, I can also do it out here. But instead of self, I'm not inside of the class. I'm outside of the window, so I'd have to reference the window itself. And I can do the exact same piece of code from the outside right here, right underneath. This is what normal, kind of not normal, but beginning programmers will do, right? They'll set up everything on the outside. They don't have an initiation class that sets everything up for them. But this line on 256 that I just added is equivalent to line 59. But that would mean we'd have to code all of this self and all this stuff back and forth, continue, continue, continue. Well, that's where it becomes inefficient and very messy. This is the reason for our initiation class. There are certain things we want an application to start with, the setup, the configuration. So we have that initiation function to do it for us. Yeah. So self is a reference to that window we just saw. It's going to continue referencing itself over and over. And the browser, we're going to stuff in this internal variable, this attribute of our class, the QWebEngineView. This is where we create that engine inside of the window we're currently using. This is what makes it a browser. Does it make it only a browser? Not necessarily, because we can stuff a QWebEngineView into any variable inside of any class. So in a way, you could make any application you create in Python be a web engine and everything else. It can be a game with a web engine in it, whatever you decide to do with it. So us being able to stuff this web engine inside of the browser variable in the window self reference, well, that basically becomes now the use of browser. In the sense of what we're doing here with these dots for classes. Self, in this case, is calling itself creating. This is the first instance of the variable browser. So we're creating a browser inside of the window self variable and setting it equal to that QWebEngineView. Again, stuffing a web engine inside of the browser. Then we access it with the dot browser variable access. Again, self is just a reference to the window variable we created on the outside here. Main window connected to main window. We set it equal to this variable window. I can change the name if I wanted to. I'll just keep it the same. Not a big deal. But that is going to be where our browser gets stuffed in, quote unquote. Horrible choice of words. Then we go inside of self again, activate the browser set URL, and then we tell it to go somewhere. In this case, I've told it to go to DuckDuckGo, and that's where it has gone. But simultaneously, I can go to Patreon and my Patreon there, rerun that, and there it is. It's accessing the paid, well, Patreon here. And just as a fun randomness, if you do need any help further, if you're learning programming, mathematics, or anything that you may need help with or expedite your understanding for, check out my Patreon. I help a lot of students out. Overall, I've helped over 5,000 students for the last 15 years, college, middle school, and lately a lot of elementary, but mostly math and elementary. But I make education fun enough for kids, so if you need actual help, do check out my Patreon. Or just, if you want to support me, subscribe, like, and you can join the Patreon for free. You have access to my Discord where you can communicate with me directly too. So just a small little input then. Now from here, that's where I went. That's what I activated the browser as. URL change. This is just a listener. URL change is going to be yes or no. In the case of us activating that specific URL, it's going to check if it's from 0, nothing, to something. And if it does change, this will be a true. We will activate the connect and update URL bar. So update URL bar is a built-in function to self. Well, because in the end, we are using a main window URL bars. Like, I don't know if you guys noticed this before, but let's say you go to your actual URL bar that we go for our file place, right? And if I do google.com, that's an extra Google. Technically, that should activate Internet Explorer or my default browser. That is a URL bar, whether you noticed it or not in the past. You can go to the, did you notice that? You can go into your file manager, type in a web browser URL, and it'll take you to the web. A little bit of a shortcut. It opens up your default browser though, so that's a consideration to make. But that's what the URL bar is. It's just that little bar, whether you have a file manager or others. Infinix, what's up, bro? Hey, let me throw up the chat. Ooh. Wait, I'm in tutoring right now. I should be in a different. Hmm. How you doing? How you doing? How's everyone doing? Let me set up chat real quick. I know my shit's clean. There you go. I hope it's because you have a good diet. What's up? What's up, fam? How you doing? All right. So, if you're just dropping in, we're basically learning to code from other people's code, which I love to do. I love to see how people code, especially exploring GitHub. And currently, me personally, I'm diving into graphical user interfaces. If you watch my previous videos, I've shown a lot, well, specifically like HTML graphical stuff. But personally, I have more of a backend. So I use PHP to create logins, to manage databases, and yada, yada, yada. I don't need a user interface per se. The only user interface in that realm is HTML and CSS, and then connect some listeners to those divs. But I've been wanting to kind of go more into the graphical space. So we're accessing this 85% of programming. If you've seen my previous videos, the 15% is like the basics, variables, loops, arrays, functions, classes, right? I've done plenty of videos on those. So I wanted to go into the next step, which is the 85%, expanding from just knowing, oh, I can make a CRM with an employee and he's worked 10 hours in this variable and he has this many dollars an hour and I can calculate and those silly little command prompt applications we learn in school. I will say I'm a proponent of school. I love school, I love education. I'm a scholar. But I have my bone to pick with what I learned in school and what I taught myself after school. If I was to put it in a percentile of usage, what I learned in school, college, University of Central Florida, is probably 2 to 5% of what I know now. The rest is me teaching myself. I've learned C++ and Java. Oops, there goes my microphone. I learned C++ and Java. That was great. I learned objects. I learned how to do command line stuff and some really primitive software. But then when I left, I was like, all right, well, what do I do with this stuff? What do I do with this C++ and Java? I was like, all right, well, is that usable? Can I make something out of it? Eventually, I realized people wanted websites. I was like, how can I do websites with what I know in C++ and Java? So I started exploring. I read a bunch of books on PHP, on JavaScript, and I realized, holy crap, these are very similar. I just have to adjust a little bit of how I grammatically, not even grammatically, just vocabularily use my words. Or my variables and my loops and stuff like this. So most of the things I've learned was outside of school, but another but towards the school. I didn't learn how to learn until I got to university and college. That's really what you should be getting from those institutions. You shouldn't be going to those institutions to be like, oh, I'm going to learn how to program and I'm going to have a job. Maybe, if you're lucky. Depends on school, location, all kinds of things. What you should be going into university and college is I want to learn how to learn because you're going to be forced to. I'm sorry, but you go to university, professors aren't paid to teach you. They are in colleges, community colleges, smaller colleges, but you go to university, professors are paid to do research. You in that class is like the last thing they care about. So that's why you're going to see professors coming up there with PowerPoints like, yeah, it's a function. Yeah, it's a variable. Yeah, that's how this works. Yeah, like that. They don't care. Well, because AI doesn't really do that great of a job. Problem with AI is if you don't know what to look for, you're risking a lot of issues with AI code. Not only just basic function and debugging. Like debugging is a skill. Let's go to that real quick. Why am I coding when AI can do everything? That's a fun question. And also, hi, Ian. Welcome in. Also, guys, make sure to like, subscribe, and join. Join any live stream I have. Ask your questions. I'm super happy to interact. Dude, okay. Okay, two questions. I gotta go one by one. First, why am I coding when AI can do it? Coding is one half of it. Coding is you putting on some writing skills, typing. You typing is 100 words per minute. You going crazy. What I learned in college, university, the first lesson in computer science. If I spend 1 hour coding and I don't debug actively, run it, test it, does it work? Good. Add new line, run it, test it, does it work? Good. Add a second line, etc., etc. If I don't do that cycle on an active basis, that 1 hour of me coding turns to about 8 hours of figuring out why everything's not working. Now, that 1 hour of me coding with debugging on top, testing, running, making sure it works, it'll expand to maybe about a good 2 or 3 hours versus 9 hours. So if you're actively debugging, which is the other 50%, coding is 50% of the thing. You code, that's one half of what you do as a programmer. The other is debugging. Not only are you debugging yourself, because especially if you're starting, you don't know your weaknesses yet. It's like in my math classes with my students. Students come in thinking that calculus is difficult. When we sit down and talk about what's going on in the problem, it turns out they forgot something in Algebra 1 back in 11th, 10th grade. Everyone has weaknesses they overcome with practice. So in my cases, that's the same thing with like there's a fundamental parallel between programming and math. It's not the math though. It's the way you think, the way you see, and the weaknesses that you have. You get to learn more about yourself as a coder. I get to learn about these coders as I'm reading their code because the way we code is different. The way a student does a problem in math is different from everyone else in class. Everyone can do it in a different space, different path. As long as the answer is correct at the end, who cares, right? You get the points. But the whole important part is that we're all different and we solve problems differently. We all have different strengths and different weaknesses. So when you're a coder, you can code all you want. If you don't check yourself, you're going to be debugging that for 8 hours. Now, why don't I just do AI? Because if I don't know how to fix myself and my problems and my debugging, how the heck am I going to fix an AI that I don't even know what it's writing? It takes more than just code to be a programmer. It takes more than just spitting out a bunch of code. It takes the ability to understand what's being spit out. Because I do use AI. I do actively use AI. Look, I have an AI space. Well, actually, this is more like creating shorts, an Ollama, whatchamacallit, web AI on my computer, basically. But I do have, where's my AI code? Hold on. I have a section for AI code. This is created by AI. Give or take, some sorting stuff. Eye track, being able to track the eyes. I was kind of playing with the eye tracker. Imagine having to debug 500 lines of AI code, and you can't even debug 200 lines of your own code. This is why I code, because it's not to get to the end, it's to get to understanding. That's not even the end. Learning is a pathway forever. Like you're as a human being, you're not going to stop learning. So Um, so I want to become a game dev. I am choosing Godot. Is it good? I like Godot. I've tried Unreal. I've tried Unity. I feel like Unity was a great place, but it fell behind. Unreal got a bit to the level of being too distracted with graphics and not even graphics, like gimmicks to make things look better. And it does still, it's good, but you're probably gonna have a difficult time making a game for like everyone. Because right now it's all about hardware. You've seen, Micron taking away all of our RAM. AI hype is basically making hardware extremely expensive. Who knows if there's gonna be an Xbox coming up next because the sales were horrible. No one cares anymore about consoles. Everyone's basically moving to computers and consoles will be big affected by this scale of inflation. We can call it inflation, but we can also call it like a resource grab. All the big guys are basically just like taking all the RAM for themselves. Oh, we got an AI database thing. Let's just stuff all of this stuff. You can't buy it anymore because it's in our warehouse. That kind of stuff, right? So in the end, uh, I think Godot is good. I think Godot is really good. I'm starting on my own as well. I have Godot in here somewhere. I think it's on a portable drive somewhere. But I have been using Godot as a way to essentially expand a little bit on the gaming space. Do, 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 do. Okay. That's the next. I do like it. I'd say focus on it. And honestly, because everyone keeps changing engines, it's Unity, Unreal, it just keep moving back and forth, whatever one skill is, one has a better feature than the other. That sort of move is going to constantly give you a headache to have to adjust to every single change. Learn one. I think Godot as an open source is amazing. It's great. It's simple. Your efforts into it will give you the essential quality on the outside. Here's how I compare it. I don't know if you guys are graphic designers or have dabbled in graphics. Godot is to GIMP as Unreal Engine is to Photoshop. Now, GIMP can do everything Photoshop can do. They just don't give you that little menu button to select that thing so it runs 10 filters and makes the outcome you want it to have. They give you all the little functions and you combine whatever combinations of effects you want, and then you get the outcome that Photoshop can give you. But the convenience of Photoshop is they've put all of those 10 buttons that you'd have to do over and over macro wise. You can technically do macros in GIMP, which is great. They put all of those in one button and then they charge you like 500 bucks a year for it. So, I like Godot a lot as far as the open source sense of it. Man, honestly, I started Python 2 days ago, got syntaxes and shit, but yeah, it was depressing. DSA and shit, honestly stuck in a loop on what is DSA or HTML, JavaScript, man, I'm cooked. Okay, well, focus on one thing. You're all over the place. You're all over the place. Started Python 2 days ago. Your syntaxes are a little off. That's fine. That happens, especially with that. If you want to figure that part out, um, there's a video I made, mm, basically comparing C++, JavaScript, and what was the other one? Java or Python? Python. But where was it? Oh, I have to go down back on the thing. Let me go look for it. I'll show you which video it is, but that'll give you a pretty good idea of what the difference is, what to keep an eye out for. But once you know JavaScript and you're trying to go to Python, it's actually not that hard. It's a fight with yourself because you're so used to basically doing curly braces that you might start doing them in Python and you're gonna hate yourself for it. Okay, demystifying programming part one. That's the one. I dropped that in chat. So if you look for the demystifying programming part one, and you need to kind of, you know, one language, this is kind of what this is for. You know one language, but you want to learn more from that. Let's say you know Python, you want to learn JavaScript. You know JavaScript, you want to learn Python. This is supposed to be that video that connects those together. And it goes down to C++ as well. There's three of them. There's part threes. So I do two at a time in essence. But in the end, that's what's happening here is that video should give you that click um on there it is. I'll send it in chat. Should give you that click on how to connect those. So hopefully that helps. I'll check your channel. Can you tell me which Linux is better for hybrid GPU and Intel AMD? I would always do AMD all day, man. AMD GPU with AMD CPU. That's my goal. Like I love the Intel before all the i5, i7 random. I have my nitpickings to do with Intel. They're behind. They're so behind. The hardware, the transistors they have in their CPUs, I think are still in like the 100 nanometer when everyone else is doing like 40 or 20 nanometer now. I can't remember the numbers, but I just know that Intel is falling behind on hardware. But I would probably always do, because in this case, Nvidia is a little sketch too lately. They've been a little bit dominant in the market, and it's a little bit sketchy. Oh, please check my chat. Yeah, I'm going through everyone. I'm going through everyone. Sorry, give me a second. Yeah. Um, so AMD and both processor and graphics card. That's my kind of goal. I haven't like I have one right now. I have an AMD forgot what Ryzen something 5 something 5400 and a GTX 570. On Linux, that sucker just installed, ran, and I could do Steam and everything. I tried on my laptop, which has an NVIDIA, that came with a lot of problems. So I would say AMD GPU and processor is your best bet to go. Hey, I like to learn about CPU, GPU behavior, context switching, and latency. I'm just starting college, so I don't know which branch to choose. If I like these things, I saw online the job scopes are less. Behavior, context switching, and latency. So it sounds like you're going for hardware or driver firmware. What space are you looking at? Like performance engineering, system engineering. So I'd say probably drivers. Yeah. Okay, so what's the question? Da-da-da-da-da. I'm just starting college, so I don't know which branch to choose from. CPU, GPU, behavior, context, switching, and latency. So you don't know whether to go between performance engineering and systems engineering. Is that correct? That's the question? Okay. The keep in mind the chat's a little laggy because we're working with like a light speed data flowing through cables all over the world. So, you know, I will respond. Yeah, of course. That's what I do normally. When I do programming, I like to run things in the background. Whether it's another person programming, just kind of gets me motivated. This is what I learned also from like working at Valencia, having that environment that boosts productivity. No, between Eco Core or CSE Eco Core. That's way in the hardware side, it seems like. Let me see. Computer science, CSE, right? Generally referred to academic disciplines. CSE stands for computer science and engineering. Okay. Okay. Got it. So here's the problem, and here's actually you're our solution to a big problem if you pick the right side. The current problem in our system, the way we treat hardware, is going to be very apparent when you take a look at how American tariffs broke down Chinese innovation with hardware. They said no more graphics card for China. What did China do? China did software enhancements. This is computer science. This is algorithms. This is complex. It's not easy. It's heavy math. Electronic communications. Oh, why does it say eco? Okay, that is interesting. So I would say if we're kind of really going between hardware and software, focus on software. We have way too many hardware engineers. I consider them the jocks of the computer space. They think they can just push higher, bigger graphics cards. Like owning a Hummer is gonna make you safer on the drive to work or whatever. The bigger the hardware, the better. That's the mentality that America is known for. And we have so many of these engineers just pushing more and more innovation in the hardware space, which is great. But we're approaching max until we get to something like quantum mechanics, quantum computing. There is, of course, the physical limitations of physics. You cannot make something so small because at some point it becomes an atom. And before that, down it goes into quarks and then goes into string theory. We can only make something physically small and bunch it up into other transistors as close and as tiny as possible until life says, nope, that's the smallest you can go. And I think we're approaching that maximum. This is because a lot of people focused on engineering, which is great. We've had that development. But the big missing part is what China did. They exponentiated the research in algorithms, the actual hard part. Engineering is hard, yes. But you know why people go to engineering, computer engineering versus computer science? It's because it's less math. It is heavy math, but computer science is theoretical math, concepts that you'd be like a physicist to basically go into. Yeah, I'd go for the computer science engineering more. In fact, work on the computer science side because there's too many engineers. We need people with algorithms, we need people with mathematical, efficient, organized thinking process that can improve everything we're trying to do today. Because at some point, when we get that algorithmic euphoria, the climax of some formula, some mathematical process that we can run these giant AI and agents on our phones, it's game over. Why do we need Google? Why do we need Amazon? Why do we need data centers? It's the algorithm that in the end makes us free from the hardware. And this has always been the case. You look at Windows and Linux. Linux can run on 20-year-old devices today, current modern Linux operating systems. But Windows makes you change to the new one every 2, 3, 4 years. Why? It's profitable. XP was great. If they just focused on XP and kept on like working on it, perfect system. I am old, so I will say that. I come from XP, but honestly, XP's Service Pack 2 was great. Just keep improving that. But they said, nope, scrap it. We're going to, what, Vista? Fucking Vista? And that was a horrible situation. Um, then later you go into even further aspects. Uh, don't put politics in here. I don't like politics. So like what do you do to elevate the thinking process to reach that? Um, Solving puzzles. And by puzzles I mean go into like you have to be a math like you have to have a passion for mathematics. You have to have this sort of process that you understand and you want to improve on the way you are thinking so you can improve on the way that systems are thinking. Um, so how do you go towards that thinking process? You start being enthusiastic about math as a puzzle to be solved in the most efficient way versus math as a class in college that you have to do because your job requires it. And this is for everybody, not just you. I have a lot of students that start young. They hate math. Like sixth grade, seventh grade, they hate math because their teacher is total crap. It's a requirement. It's like dictatorship in the class. When you have a dictator in the class, you don't have a teacher, you have something to hate and whatever is attached to that teacher to hate. So the first thing is to change the opinion, the personal perspective of how mathematics can actually set us free in the literal sense. Algorithms will give us AI on our phones so we don't have to pay 50 to $100 for Google data centers, right? That's literally what could happen. But when we don't focus on algorithms, we're kind of stuck with the hardware, and who can own hardware? Well, those that have the physical monetary ability to do so, big tech. So we are approaching that sort of middle point. We need more puzzle solvers in this world. Linux is king. I use Linux personally. Cool. Yep. Yep. I have multiple. I've been leaning more towards Linux lately. Okay, so that's the questions. Oh, thanks for the interactions, guys. Um, let's go back to the code. So I'm gonna take the next maybe 15, 20. If I see more questions, I will answer, but I will try to manage both sides here. So the eye track is an AI. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Going backwards in time. There we go. So back to the browser. I hope it helps, man. I hope it helps. And it's a personal development. In the end, I will be as nerdy as possible and say math will save us all. If you don't know math, those that do know math will use it against you. Have you heard that before? It's called statistics. It's called politics. It's called politicians. It's called economists. It's called everyone that uses math on behalf of fooling you because they make a chart look a specific way and you're emotionally inclined. Now we're going to the more level, a higher level of that. It's like we can actually free ourselves from techno oligarchs by focusing on math and efficiency and algorithms so that we can use it on our phones. A whole AI agent that would simply be the same as like a Google database system. Fundamentals of coding? Well, I kind of gave you that video, bro. I can do it for another video for sure, but I do have this one. I said it in chat. So you can always save this, go for it later. But you said, I remember you saying you had a confusing aspect between JavaScript and Python. So try it out. Try it out. Again, I'll send it in chat, but for now we're going into the 85% technically. Uh, You're looking for the first 15%, right? You're looking for the first 15 variables, functions, all that stuff. There are other videos I've made based on the beginners aspect. You can also take a look at the beginners place list. But for now, I'm going into the 85% for this video. So, but we'll go into basically it's still beginners in this sense, right? In this sense, we're beginning space of how do I read code? So super init, we've kind of went through the first set. Let's kind of recap, right? So main window starts our browser. We import Q main window. We initiate that specific function automatically. And then we initiate the parent that we are importing. So the Q main window is the parent. Our class that we're creating here, main window, without the Q, is our child. It's becoming a blueprint, inheriting what the Q main window had. And then we create a browser, we stuff it inside of the browser variable, we activate the URL of that browser to a specific location, and then we put a listener to see if we change the URL. If we change it, then we should technically be moving to another page. So if I go over here, I pressed enter, I guess. Load, finish, connect, self, update title. So this is kind of like the step-by-step that a browser needs to do. Every time we adjust something, the whole kind of browser has to readjust itself. So we change the URL, we connect, we update the URL bar with that connection. So it just basically copies what I have here and puts it in the URL finishes. So browser, again, will have a bunch of different internal functions. How do we look at those, right? So sometimes we might want to figure out, how do I look inside of the browser functions? Like this. Type it out anywhere. You go to self.browser and then look inside. There's the window aspect of the browser. Is my YouTube working fine? Something having issues? Hold on. What's going on with YouTube? 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 YouTube is not receiving enough video to maintain. What's your problem? What's up with that? Dropped frames? Network issue? Hold on a second. Whoa, what's going on with my nets? No, my net's fine. 8 milliseconds, 9 milliseconds. YouTube's acting a little funky. Give it a second, guys. Oh, from scratch? It depends on what language. There's a lot of different developers, so it really does depend on what language you want to start from. And everyone teaches the clear. But that's also why I like to do what I do, is I haven't found enough good videos. Python, let me see. What would I look for? Let me see if anyone that I've watched before. No. Sometimes these 10-minute courses, you get the code, but you don't understand the full view. No, don't know any of these. 2 minutes? Explained in 2 minutes? Ugh, yeah, okay. Like you're gonna do anything. Like this is the problem, right? These are gimmicks that I'm trying to fight also. I'm trying to be as like legitimate as just based as possible. But you know what? People love these clickbait titles. Learn Python in 2 or explain in 2 minutes. Learn it in 10. Everyone's looking for that quick fix, man. It's not that quick. Let me see. I'd say maybe like Code Academy is the, well, if I do like Network Chuck. I don't know. Network Chuck would be a good one, honestly. But I don't know if he has like a good beginner space. I love Network Chuck. He is my dude. Free Code Camp, a full course, about 4.5 hours. Yeah, man. You want to learn Python from beginning to end? Here's the thing too, though, when you're like watching a movie, how much do you remember? I remember maybe 50%, 30%. 'Cause at some point, like it gets kind of boring, and it's like, oh man, what happened in the last 10 minutes or 15? So it doesn't always work to absorb everything at the same time. But it's very attractive to have full course, learn everything now, 4.5 hours. What I like to do is to kind of space it on pieces of information. That's why I have the 15% beginning space, right? So if I go back to my playlist, meh, playlists. If you go to my beginners, somewhere in here, hold on. Yeah, I'll copy and paste that as well. Hi, cat. What's up? You want to see my cat? Here he is. He's chilling. To get you interested, you'd have to find a purpose for your interest. You can't be interested by terminal programs that you've done in college that tell you how to manage an employee and his work hours. That gave me zero interest. You have to build a server. You have to connect to that server and host a website. You have to basically use that coding skill to create a browser, right? So potentially it's not about like finding a person that'll give you that interest. It's finding out what you want to do in order to gain that interest. And for me personally, it was creating something. It was like, hey, I know how to code, but what do I do with all these commands that they're teaching me? A for loop, a while loop? When, how would I ever want to use that? And then I explored other people's code. And then I saw, oh, I know this stuff. Thanks. I know this stuff. He's adorable. His name's Shadow. I know this stuff. I see and I read the person's code and it makes perfect sense when I see somebody else create it. So interest is only missing due to the lack of experience of how it's applied. As soon as you understand how it's applied, then you're like, oh, I can make this, I can make that. What have I made with Python lately? Um, let's see. My favorites. Money stuff, accounting stuff, crypto stuff, networking, database space. No, it's actually connecting. Oh, it's a class for something else. A DNS backup, so I can back up the DNS host on my computer. Uh, Messaging, I was playing with someone else's code again. Fat cat, trying to make like an end map. Fat cat? Who was a fat cat? Who's fat cat? Yeah, fat cat. Yeah, trying to make like an end map, like a manual end map. So I'm like, oh, are these full done applications? No, they're constantly being tweaked and I get distracted and I have ADHD and I go to something else every 15 minutes. But at some point, it becomes a nice little project for yourself, right? A server, a TCP server, right? So you can connect and transfer files between stuff. Mm. Once you find that thing that you want to do, yeah, or you can make a video game. Honestly, that's the other cases. There's creatives out there that are learning how to code, and that's fantastic. I love it. I love the fact that people that are creative are learning to code. Because honestly, AAA title games, they're horrible. The AAA industry is slop now. But the people that left Bethesda, the people that left Ubisoft, the people that left those fat cats in the gaming industry, and they started their own little gaming space, they've made fantastic games. Expedition 33. It's crazy. So it's the people that have been inspired that are being lulled into sleep. We got to get out of that. So a lot of creative people are learning how to code and using that to their advantage, which is great. Llama stuff, a bunch of bots. A Marco, a Marco, was it Markowicz chain analysis for my stocks. Where was the other stuff? Obama lip sync, TensorFlow training. This is all database stuff. Hmm. I had a seasonality one too. Stock alerts, stock bot, port theory, bonds, programs, Black-Scholes, machine learning. Sometimes it's created by me, sometimes I'm analyzing it for the other case scenarios. But hey, that's it. Organize your code folder, you organize your mind. You get a set of code that you are interested in, and currently I'm interested in GUIs. You see this. We're doing it now in front, right? So we're doing GUI stuff. We're creating a browser, learning how all the components fit together. Meh, I hate Google. Can't even use it without logging in. Stupid. Anyway, and then what server, DNS backup. Oh, where did it go? Seasonality. Yeah, created some charts with Y-Finance, Matplotlib, Pandas. I put in SPY, SPY, the main S&P 500 company. Browser. It's downloading the data. I think. There's was preloaded, use the link. Potentially. Oh, error. Permission policy. Hmm. Something changed. Maybe because I'm running something else. Hold on, let me get rid of that and then run this. Can only run one of them at once. That's true. So I can look up. This is my very basic menu system. Start to end seasonality, election year seasonality, pre-election year. I'll just do start to end. Um, let's do in video. Let's see how that's doing. Has changed argument. Oh no, they've changed stuff, and that's the problem. Big prop, huh? What do you mean too many requests? How to adjust default to true? I might have to change that because every time I let go of a piece of code for a long period of time, they change the way it functions somewhere on the other end. Auto adjust YF download. Auto adjust stock start end. Has change argument auto adjust default to true. It did complete the download. Failed. NVIDIA rate limiter data frame. Traceback basic. And this is being a programmer. It's debugging what we're doing. I'm from the US, born in Florida. I also have half family in Europe, so I'm dual citizen. I'm all over the place most of the time. Basic election title, basic not defined. What do you mean basic not defined? That is true, it's not. What was I trying to do here? Download, download. Okay, what about the other options? Hold on. I'm not gonna debug this one. Okay, I have to figure out what changed. Anyway, that worked at some point. Seasonality is a good one that I have. It should work fine. Uh, GUI. Oh, it's the build, the distribution. There's a seasonality GUI. This was me actually taking again Qt and attaching it to some algorithms. Again, I'm an algorithm guy. I love math. Hold, relax. Just math. It's not a big deal. Yes, I do have a Discord. You can basically gain access to it by going to my Patreon. So anyone that's here, check out my Patreon. Go to patreon.com/ChrisMIA. You don't have to pay. If you want actual tutoring, I do provide that. But no, I have to do like a hold on. I do have students that get tutoring, but I probably have to do an incognito to show you what's gonna look like. Let me see. Can I do a new incognito? Incog? Private. All right, so because I'm logged in, so it's gonna show something else. If you go to Chris MIA, Patreon.com/Chris MIA. Again, I teach. This is what I've done for 15 years. You can also find me on Stigmy Learning. This is just a place that I work for students right now, K-12. But I've taught college, I've taught math, I've taught programming and science and literature and all kinds of stuff that fancies my interest. But if you want to join for free, once you join and set up, you have access to my Discord. It's just a small little thing, right? I want to, one, make sure people are motivated to at least join to get a link to Discord. I don't want it to be a public fiasco for everyone. It's highly moderated. It's got bots. It basically also has like a free games area where I have a bunch of bots running that are going to tell you what the free games on Epic, on Steam, and stuff like that is. So if you're a gamer, super good. Can you make a video on GitHub like everything about GitHub? Yeah, everything on GitHub? I don't know. Everything means like things that most people don't even use. GitHub is only like 10% functional. Upload a file, share it with people, make it your resume. That's what GitHub is. Everyone's trying to make it as like this collaborative place of like pushing new updates and everyone's got to push their own version. And then there's like version tracking and yeah, I don't care for that. I don't do GitHub. I do it for a portfolio, but yeah, I'll send it in chat. But I do not do GitHub personally. I find that whenever we get these extra tools in our system, when we're actually like, you know, trying to program, and then we get Node.js, and then we have this overhead, and then this thing on top, and now you got to learn this and all of this. It just becomes like you're not even programming anymore. You're just like, what are you doing really, right? You're managing systems. It's not a programming system. It's you're GitHubbing your version controls. It's a lot of extra stuff. So you spend more time not programming than actually functionally programming. So I focus on programming. I don't do GitHub other than have like a couple of things up there just so I people know I exist, as a resume, as a little portfolio. How's it going, Dinesh? Welcome in. So there's the Patreon, GitHub, Discord. Anything else, guys? Any other questions before I continue? Continue. Hmm. Like again, like the whole GitHub thing. If you want to learn a program, it's not about GitHub. You can use it to your advantage. Go look at other people's code. Learn how to code. Find someone completely new to GitHub. Look at the first program they've ever coded. Look at that, real good. Then go to Microsoft CEO, whatever, or engineer, and look at how they code. And then say, all right, do you see the space between normal first coder versus the professional dude coding? Now, I will also like go with some things that are not necessary. I do like object oriented, but I start building without OOP until it becomes a system where I can refactor it nicely into an object. In most cases, it's a debugging process. Okay. Seasonality. Da 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 da. Where did I go? Run Ollama Docker. No. Da 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 da. Where did it go, main? Yeah, okay. So okay. We've got our browser essentially set up. Here it is. I'm gonna run it again. But this is a oh, right. I gotta comment this out. So there's our custom browser, right? Created in Qt. This browser acts as a window using Qt interfaces, GUIs, but it also conveniently, technically, has a QWeb browser engine, which is nice. It's probably gonna, I'm not sure. Let's see. Detect Chrome driver engine, browser type. Let's see what this is. Uh, oh, I gotta go to like DuckDuckGo. Hold on. It doesn't have a. Actually, I can make that. If there is no URL, then go to a default search engine. So I can technically code that in there eventually. So if I do detect current browser engine. What browser? My browser. Is my browser out of date? What is mybrowser.com? That's nice. Qt. Oh, wow, it has its own. Qt WebEngine-based browser on Windows 10. 6.7. Okay, cool. JavaScript enabled, cookies enabled, third-party enabled. Nice. Okay. So it is its own specific browser. It's not even what I would say Qt Web Engine. Let's see what this is. Exactly. I don't even have icons for the back button. That's hilarious. What a bare bones browser. User agent, Qt Web Engine overview. Now there might be like this could be a whole other like browser that I've never seen before, or it could be like based off of something else. Like maybe it has a Chrome driver built in somewhere. Yep, there it is. The Web Engine core has Chromium built in. So we're technically running Chromium. Technically. Why does that matter? It's because most of the internet's basically. It's all right. It's all right. Ask your questions. I like to move back and forth, but I want to keep people's attention. Um, with the title being that we're learning programming. Appreciate the engagement for sure. Just as long as I can kind of do a couple of minutes here and you're cool with like you can type in questions and then I'll just look over when I'm kind of pausing and I'll answer the questions, no problem. Uh, this may not be immediately, so don't lose don't lose patience with me because I got to go back and forth a bit. So we're using technically a Chromium-based browser, fine. The set central widget, well, that's basically this whole thing is a widget. How do I show this to you? Let's kind of take apart this browser, right? So up here, we have Qt. This is just Qt window, main window. Then within that, we basically have the QWebEngine. This is where it's sitting. Qt Web. This is the central widget. This is where it's aligning this browser right there in the middle of our Qt main window. So you're mixing a GUI back button, forward button, reload, and home. You're just basically attaching functions to each one of these that affect the browser, the Qt web browser. Yes, I do know AI, and I've been working with machine learning a little bit. I'm not a professional. I don't have optimized algorithms, but I do know enough to train um, a TensorFlow-based model to identify whether something's a cat or a dog. So I do know that, but I don't have the resources to go further than that. It requires a lot. I want to retrain one of my AI models, but I'm gonna need at least like 64 gigs of graphics card memory. And you've seen the prices on those suckers lately? So the Qt main is anything that's essentially a window base, right? A window type of, even the bottom here is technically Qt, right? This is all Qt. I'd probably say this scroll bar is also Qt. Right? The widget is the actual web browser and it fits within the Qt window and Qt manages, the width, the height, you have to go up or down. I can't do it like this. Okay. So it's kind of working back and forth. You can like and subscribe for future content. I do have some stuff on basically running your own AI. I have a Ollama based AI that I have locally that I basically not train, but I use in Python. So I do have plenty of AI-based stuff in here too. So like and subscribe for sure. I can't do everything at once because the title of the window or the title of the stream is something, but hit the notifications, like, subscribe, and wait for the time. The more I get these requests, the next video, higher chance it's gonna be the thing you guys want. Okay. So, there's our window. Q status bar, that's the bottom. Q status bar is so here's kind of the organization. It's linear, right? So web engine up front is being set in the browser. We don't actually load it yet. We set the central widget as the self.browser. So that's the central widget. But every single main window is going to have what I highlighted above here. So every main window is going to have these things, a title, some buttons, etc. And then the Qt web actual browser is a central widget, so it's basically hovering the main window. Try not to spam. That's a little bit childish, please. Um, I mean, I want to teach you. I don't want to be your father. Um, so when we're doing this kind of stuff here, we're seeing the order in which stuff is happening. So we set the URL, fine, that's up here, the actual URL that we did when first we opened it. Then we set the central widget in the center, and then set status bar at the bottom. This is where it's going to say loading, connecting to websites, doing cookies, whatever. The Qt toolbar navigation, add toolbar. Now we're probably looking at the top part here. So the toolbar potentially, this is where order sometimes gets a little fuzzy. The toolbar is either the top file space or the whole bar with the URL. So that's what I'm not sure about. But the toolbar will be activated. It's kind of reserved, and we can basically customize it at any point. Because every single window has a standard in the way it looks. You've got the toolbar stuff at the top, URLs and buttons and all that. The main thing that it does, play a video, look at your files, go to the web, play a game, right? Everything has this basic setup. So that's where the central widget comes into play. In our case, we don't play games in our little application window. We're giving it a browser to display. How to make a Linux custom distro? Start with Arch Linux. A long way to get. So self status, Q status bar, we set the status there, navigation, icon size. So I believe this would be for the main window. It could be actually 16 by 16. Yeah, it's a pretty small amount. So I'd say that's like a title icon size. So each one of these things essentially sets up our browser, shortcut open, key sequence F5. Here's how we connect. Refresh, you know that F5 refresh on your keyboard? How does it work in a browser? It's a listener, a key sequence listener, and Qt specifically. We press F5. It has a Q shortcut sort of functionality where it's hatching browser or main window to this F5 shortcut. That's what the shortcut is combining here. And then when we activate F5, we connect to a self-browser reload. The connect is a way for us to like take one function and then attach it to another. Essentially, yeah, we're learning we're learning the 85%. I always like to go into the details between what is it we're learning. 15% is like variables, arrays, loops, and stuff like that. Those are previous videos I've done. If you need to learn like the basics of how a language works, I've got a ton of them. You can check out, what was it? My beginners playlist. So I'll give you that. But that's like the beginning, right? If you need to really work with stuff in the very, very beginning. But here we're kind of beginning in the 85%. You know how to code, but you don't know what to do with it. Maybe you know the basics, right? Loops, variables, that kind of stuff. What do you do now? That's what we're focusing on at this point. And right now we're just analyzing a browser made in Qt with Python. Or browser made with Python in Qt. Something like that. Anyway, and this is just for us to understand how to work with like user interfaces. Oh, if you know JavaScript or Java? Because you said CSS, but that's not connected to Java, rather it's JavaScript. If you know JavaScript and going into others, so this is Python. You've got a language that essentially is now going to be the main language we're all learning because of AI. So um, always a good set of extra tools to learn about Python. So we're in Python. If you need kind of that sort of specific detail, I do have um, this one as well. The one that connects JavaScript and Python together. With, demystifying programming, part 1, and part 2 and part 3. Basically, this will show you the connection between two types of syntaxes we have in programming. The Python, the Lua tabs and kind of oddities that they use versus like a classical Java, C++, JavaScript. Not the functionality, because Java and JavaScript function differently, but they do essentially have similar grammar, right? So that's a good video to help you out with like the grammar of how I can take what I know in Java or JavaScript, because I would assume again you know JavaScript. And then I would take that into consideration of how do I connect what I know in Java and JavaScript over to Python. Okay. So status bar, set status self. Okay, we did that. Q shortcut. We saw how the F5 reload button gets attached to our browser. A Q action with a Q icon. Oh, look at that. Do I have an icon? I do have an icon. Hmm. So it is activating an icon, an image that should be attached to the back button. However, my back button doesn't have an image. So that's a fun little adjustment we can play with. OS path dot join images. Images. Now it could be a case of like, yeah, I think okay, it's because of my odd. Yeah. I know what's going on. Whenever I work in VS Code, there's like a odd conflict of directories. I basically have to go to images, copy the relative path. I think it was relative path. Yeah, and throw it in here. So it's like Python GUI example master. Like it always runs programs from the root, right? It runs it from the root, unfortunately, which is that one Python space. But images is a bunch of folders down the road. So in this case, the images didn't load because it's not referencing the directory correctly. So now it should, let me do this. Control find. Careful when you do replacement all. I'm going to do images with quotes as I see those are the main ones I want to adjust. And then I'm going to put quotes around my new thing. And I'm going to replace all. Gotta be very delicate when you do replace all because sometimes it replaces stuff you don't want. Like if I didn't put images in quotes, I would have literally replaced images anywhere else as a regular piece of text. And it could have been, I mean, let's see how many options we have. 15. It would have replaced this with also the same thing. It would have replaced, okay, nothing crazy. I mean, it's just a directory file. Okay. Sometimes your variable could have the word images in it, and then that breaks more. So now that I've adjusted the actual directory location, I can rerun my browser. And unhopefully, I didn't get my images. Okay. Hmm. Then it's a reference of like, can I go to the next step? Instead of relative, I can make like so many shortcuts for this, but I'm too lazy to actually do it. And I'll go to images again and get the full path. So I'm going to change it from relative to full path. Well, let's see if that did anything. Pathing's always tricky. Okay, it's going to have to be a little bit more advanced than that. I'm just redo everything. At least I know there's an issue with images. So we attach images that aren't being attached to those specific back button, to the forward button, reload button, and so on and so forth. These should be images, right? Yeah, look, very basic, small little PNGs over here. Cool. Home button Q action. So that's it. All we're doing here is attaching buttons. Q label. HTTPS icon. Oh, lol. So you can't have an actual HTTPS notification knowing that you're under a encrypted service, HTTPS. Set URL bar QLineEdit. QLineEdit is a way for us to essentially, yeah, create the URL bar. Return pressed. I think this is for the enter. Navigate to URL. So here's what happens when we return pressed. This is going to activate the function method navigate to URL. So I can find where that is by highlighting, going to Control F. That's another function here. So we're kind of moving around different functions, which is fine. But we are getting a little distracted with these things. So what happens? The QURL, self URL bar text, scheme, QSet scheme HTTP, and then set the browser URL. Mm, and then back to the init. So we're still analyzing the init, but potentially the init's going to be one of the biggest pieces because it's just basically set up the window and then let it run automatically. So that's why the initiation would be the biggest piece to set up because in the end, it's basically the beginning of our program. I'll play around with the images later, potentially figure out a fix for that. I feel like one thing I can technically do. Let's find out. I can do it. Oh no, I removed my Q main. Oh, hold on. I'm messing so many things up. I wanted to keep it the same. I keep changing. I change it just so I can show you an example and it works, but I forget to change it back. So let's do a print of what OS path join shows. Ah, see, images. That's not the full path, so it's not going to directly find it. So if I do images, change that to direct path, it should basically be the URL I'm seeking, right? Browser main. Code, Python, images, question. Yeah. Demo. Oh, demo. Okay, okay. IQT demo browser. That's a weird typo. Oh, that's why. Escape characters. Why did it escape here, but not here? Okay. I hate escape characters. I blame Windows for this. Gotta double these left side bars here. Otherwise it doesn't read it correctly. All right, so let's try that again. I'm gonna replace all. Just save it and run it. Oh, hold on. Oh, double quote. Yeeks. Oh, double quote again. Whoopsie. Replace it all. Okay. Be careful. It's like surgical precision, trying to make sure your replace matches exactly what you want to replace and nothing else. Control Z. It's a lifesaver. I will say that. All right. So if I reload now with the new adjustments, I should get my icons back in. Come on. Come on. Yeah. Look, it's icons. Woot. Nice. Okay. So, yep, there it is. So it was basically the escape character that got in the way from the direct URL, which messed up the way to seek the actual location of the things. Okay, cool. So I fixed that. Hmm. The stop button, it's got a stop icon now. Very good, very good, very good. Now, for most of these, when we're dealing with basically figuring out the rest of the functionality, probably going to go to all the self locations, all the extra valuations here. So we've analyzed the crap out of the init pretty well. Now we look for the update title. Nothing crazy. If you find, and again, this is kind of a general programming habit slash useful awareness. If you see something being done multiple times, the same amount of code being done multiple times, make it its own function. Probably be updating title every time we click on a link, every time we go to a new URL browser or URL adjustment. It's going to change all the time, so give it its own little functional method. Navigate mozzarella. I'm not sure why they named it mozzarella, but I do like that. I think that's delicious. So, why did they do that? Navigate mozzarella. Okay. Action. Set status tip. Go to Super Scholar homepage. Is that the main home? No. Where's the mozzarella? I want some mozzarella. This is for the Q Action Scholar browser homepage. Hold up. I need to jam a little bit. Okay. Self, Scholar, page, triggered, connect, navigate, mozzarella. It's the weirdest thing I've ever. Wait a minute. Oh, with mozzarella. Is that like the help about? Oh, look at that. Oh yeah. About Scholar browser. I can change the icon on this. What is this? A skunk? That's funny. And then Scholar browser homepage. Yeah, there you go. So I guess the mozzarella is what they call. Is that what they call the menu? Not mozzarella. Oh, these are mozzarellas because they're little lines of cheese. Some of the annotations of programming are kind of funny. Okay, so I found what that is. Set window icon. Cool. Okay, so we basically reviewed what the initiation of the browser was. It just sets up all the icons in this exact path, time after time. About action, Q action, Q icon inside of that as the icon of choice, the location of that icon, the name of that entry, and then a self-reference to the browser being attached to it. File menu, save file action. Okay, nice. Save file triggered. Okay, this is another one, right? So let's see how we save files. We connect the trigger of the save file action to connect. This is also how Lua does it. When you're doing any sort of like connecting one function to another or one function or a user interface piece connects to a piece of the program in the code, you would use a connect type application or function. So the save file is this function here, and it just does a typical with Python open save file write. So something super typical for a Python application. So we're just still using Python to do most of the functionality. Now we just have an overhead, which is a browser. Save file again, save HTML, save file, save page as, hypertext mark language, okay. Print page, print preview dialog, that's a built-in system for our browser. So if I go to file, print, object has no attribute print. Oh, crashes. Interesting, interesting. Do it again. This is in the line 223. Oh, maybe it didn't just print. Let's print again. Yep, okay, so there's the print dialog. And I don't have a printer, I normally just print to PDF, so that makes perfect sense. Good, good. So the print function works. I guess there was a weird underline there. Not sure why. Sometimes variable-based naming conventions. Homepage Google. I'm gonna change that to DuckDuckGo. Navigate to URL. Okay, so there's the actual activator for us pressing enter going to a specific URL. So navigate to URL takes a QURL format already pre-configured by the Qt interface. We do a self URL bar.text. So we reference self, which is the window, which is this window. Where'd it go? I hate moving around too much because I forget where I was. Right here. Right here. Self browser print. Self URL. So inside of our window, there's going to be a bar, a URL bar. And that URL bar is going to contain the text. So very similar if you've used JavaScript to actually create web pages. It's very similar to this, right? We're using an access way. It's actually, other than the fact that we are using Python to activate Qt 6 or PySide, to create our interface here, but we're still applying the same sort of thing, hunt down that specific variable that contains the URL, where is it? The URL text. And in JavaScript too, when we take a div from our HTML page, we can go div or get element by ID, get the div, whatever it's class or ID or whatever. And then you go to dot text to get the text of that div. Or dot, oh, it's actually inner text. That's the keyword for that. It's inner text or inner HTML. Like we can get the text as a formatted HTML and then reuse it as HTML so it loads up all the contents, or just as pure text. But in the case of that, this is the same JavaScript when we do was it document dot get element by ID, some div, and then we do inner text. Now it's slightly different because inner text in JavaScript is a variable. However, this is a function that seeks out, has an algorithm, instructions on how to grab the text. While JavaScript, this is why I like JavaScript on its basic, like if you're learning programming, base, scratch, step one, JavaScript's the least frictional. It's going to let you really understand the code that you're using, and it connects GUI with code on the same page. That's the beauty of it. You don't have to install Python or anything else. You don't have to basically need a browser and a notepad, and you can learn how to program in JavaScript. That's the only requirements. Python, now we enter syntaxes and finding your interpreter and running the interpreter, probably setting environmental variables and a lot of technical skills that sometimes students just kind of reach a barrier and they're like, oh, I thought it'd be easier than this. But that's not even programming. That's more of like the IT sense of things, how to manage a computer. So there's like a IT barrier that a lot of students confuse for code and programming, that once they can't figure out how to set up Python, they give up. And that's why I just say, hey, if you want to learn a program, start with JavaScript. It has the least amount of friction. You have a browser? Great. You use the internet. You go to YouTube? Done, right? Second, Notepad? Done. Use the Notepad. It's going to be gross, but at least you get a good start. Then you'll see and appreciate like the reason why we use Visual Studio Code or Sublime or Atom or whatever other, graphical user interface for coding. So JavaScript has less friction when it comes to grabbing text from our document, our GUI, while here we kind of have a function that we don't know how it works, but it should get the text from the URL bar. Cool. So that's what it does. The URL bar is up here, grabs that text, and then we go to the page we go for from the navigate URL. And again, whenever we see a need, let's see how many times this is accessed. Actually, only twice. Yeah, I mean, since we have to connect, this is also another reason to use a function, even though we don't have a lot of code for the actual navigate to URL. We are still using it as a connection. We're connecting it to return pressed, the actual return button, enter button. So as soon as we press return, it connects to the function navigate. So sometimes it's useful to have versatility between connections of interactivity through functions. So it's not that we're using this a lot, so it needs to be in its own function. We are actually just doing the function so that we can activate a connection with the function. There's no way to code it in here, is what I'm saying. So we have to code it in an open space and then reference it in the connection. And then update URL bar. That's it. That's it. Set fix maps. I'm glad that I got the little icons fixed up. That's it. That's all 250 lines of code. For now, I think I'm gonna leave it here. We're gonna go through a lot of other stuff. I mean, I'm open for questions if anyone has any right now. Literally any questions you'd like. We're done with the whole browser analysis here. We've seen how it works, how it starts, how it activates, how it sets up, how it connects functions together, and even how to fix the icons, because that issue. Yeah, yeah, 100%. Like that's where I started, man. Like, but I started with C. Starting with C, C++, and Java is the biggest headache. College, Valencia. I had computer programming class. Started us with C. We used Notepad. We saved it as a CPP file or C file, and then we had to run it through a compiler, and then it creates a little exe, and it's like, cool, I have an application, but all it does is show hello world, you know, back in the day. Um, but in the end, it's really in that scenario, right? It just you really start to appreciate, oh, the colors, the organization of all the tabs. Like at first, you don't realize how tabbing is really nice, and especially when it auto tabs for you. That's the biggest appreciation between Notepad. That auto tab. Otherwise, you'd be like, wait, how many tabs is this? One, two, three, four. Okay. One, two, three, four. It's a constant headache. But we have plenty of demos. There's a tabbed version of the browser. There's a calculator. I've done calculators in JavaScript and Python, all kinds of stuff. A camera. Cool. That sounds interesting. Crypto. What that? A crypto miner? It has a worker. Worker does also mean like a threaded worker. It's running in the background sort of worker. PyQt graph. No module name. PyQt graph. Oh, okay. So if this pops up, I have to install. So I'll use my Python 3.11 and then do M for module, pip install PyQt graph. Very quick install. Nice. And now we'll try rerunning it. Ooh, what's this? This is an actual crypto. Hey. Oh, that. That's snazzy, dude. USD, Euro, GBP. I can modify this. Ooh, this would be a nice one to play with. Look at this. Nice little window managing, looking at this. If you don't have LTC, it's probably a good time to buy. Not financial advice. That's cool. All right, I'll probably take that one next. Color pickle, currency, media player, Minesweeper, all kinds. Oh, damn. Look, we have a notepad. Voila. Can I modify this to have like a textual coding reference? And can I make my own editor? That would be a good place to start creating your own editor. But then you'd have to have a lot of conditions based on parentheses and stuff. So that's fun. Anyway, plenty of more analyses, learning learning code from code in the future. We've got plenty of options here. Eventually, PySide 2, PySide 6, more demos. No, the same ones. And then we can explore to a whole bunch of stuff in the end. Let's see, let's see. Anything else? Anything else before I call it here, boys and girls, gents and ladies, ladies and gents? Any questions? Any comments? Anything you would like to know or do? Like, let me know now if you want me to go over a specific thing or plan a video for the future or a live session in the future. Uh, we gotta maintain the live subject. I do appreciate, and I'm gonna take a note. Learn new skill. There was someone that wanted to do what? Wanted to do to do. Custom distro. Do I want to go over custom distro stuff? Probably not. Again, custom distro is really going to be based on like the aspect of knowing Linux. It's not really a programming space, right? Just knowing how to work with Linux. Hmm. Can I read? Communication, ECE, the guy that came in for computer science questions, basics of coding. I have a basics of coding again list. I'll go ahead and drop it as we end our session today. But definitely take a look at, depending on where you start. I'm trying to be diverse with the process of beginning, right? It's a lot of ways to begin. Beginning is starting from scratch or starting with an already known language. So if you already know a language and you want to expand to all the formats that we normally do, Python, JavaScript, Java, C++, then I recommend starting with this one in the chat. This is demystifying programming. Literally that sense. There are literally two ways we program, with curly braces or with tabs. Is it PHP? Is it Python? Is it C++, JavaScript, Java? All of them base themselves on one of those two forms. So knowing which one you're looking at can help you understand how to connect to the other. If you know JavaScript, that'd be perfect to learn Python. If you know Python, that'd be perfect to learn JavaScript. You see side by side how they compare, and it just clicks, right? Everything from the functions to the variables to the code blocks. It gives you a new perspective on programming. So there's part one, part two, and part three. But generally, if you ever wanted to start, the beginners playlist is the best place to start. Beginners playlist, I try to put all the videos that are specifically for either no experience or some experience. That's the playlist. Not a lot, right? Maybe you've coded your own hello world and now you don't know where else to go. That's a beginner's playlist. Then, if you feel like more of a challenge, I have the Chris MIA coding. Still has some of the details on there, like the demystifying. But I have stuff like transforming HTML templates into PHP systems, DeepSeek AI on your computer with Python and Ollama. Roblox Studio, give or take, it was kind of a thing I tried for a bit. Coding with AI, so taking AI code and analyzing it and seeing how you can fix it. And it's just not the specific beginner space, right? You want to expand on your algorithms. There's a game called Joy of Programming. It's a Steam game. You use Python to solve puzzles. Then there's an IT for beginning space, so knowing how to play with information tech, IT, fixing, not fixing computers, but administrating PCs. How much do you need to know IT in order to be fluent in programming? Because once your environment's set up, all you got to do is code, but it's the environmental variables, it's the access controls, it's the Python installation and the management of files and packages and yada yada, right? That's the computer programming stuff. It's knowing how to manage your system. So that's a good place to start if you need to kind of get a good idea of what or how much infotech do I need to know and understand in order to not be stopped by computer when I just want to write some code and learn coding. There is a caveat, right? When we're dealing with programming, we're dealing with a computer. We're dealing with a computer, we're dealing with directories, we're dealing with environmental variables, whether you're in Windows or Linux or Mac, administrative, giving access to software, to firewalls, to networking. Like you're still a computer tech. But when you kind of disassociate your computer programming skills from computer tech skills, that's when you run into like, oh, I can't set up my Python environment, or oh, my Node.js is not working properly. And then you go to like GitHub and get someone else to set it up for you, and now you're dependent on that person's package or give it to be Docker or whatever kind of all these extra tools we have in the development space, GitHub, Docker, they're just kind of like shortcuts for us to not be techies, an automation shortcut, right? So we can just look at something, import it, and let it run. But the problem with that is I've always thought about this is the more code from outside sources we put in our code. I love to code everything myself. I hate to have to depend on external packages. Because now whatever mistakes that those people, those developers made in their package is inherited into my system. So I like to either look at all the code, fix it, make it work better, and then import it into my system. Or I would rather not use anyone else's packages, or at least learn how they do it so I can do it myself. Oh, triple checking, dude. Trust in yourself. OCD is difficult. Um, I'm more of the ADD spectrum. I have to adjust my focus multiple times in order to keep myself entertained, to keep going. Like right now, how long have we programmed for? How long has it been, guys? Oh, how long it's been? How long is this video? Anyway, normally about 15 minutes for ADD. For OCD, it's about trust. Um, if you're the type of person that has to touch the doorknob 3 times before you walk through a door, or to clean everything spotless because you think it's gonna be better, it looks better, and it's that little corner of your eyes noticing that little spot on the floor, it's acceptance. It really is a mental acceptance to be like, look, you can do it now or later. Call it procrastination, sure, but in my eyes, the dirtier my environment is, it's not unbearable. I have a cat, so there's hair everywhere. The dirtier my environment is, the more my immune system benefits from it because that's how, like, literally we work. We work based on how dirty our environment is, and let's grow accustomed and become strong against the germs. So if you're like a OCD germaphobe, accept the germs. They're fine. It's going run in the mud and they get better for coming back covered in mud because they are one with the germs. The body's fighting the germs like it should, and they become stronger when they meet those germs again. Yeah, I know. It is a crazy mentality. Um, but I also used to be the guy that would like shower and condition his hair every single day, and I found no benefit from it because every single day that I didn't shower and condition, my hair got greasier faster. So I was dependent on this cycle. Eventually, I saw my friend, and she basically didn't like, she washed her hair once a week or once every 2 weeks. And I was like, how does your hair not become oily? And she said, well, because I don't do it as often, and my body doesn't need to make it oily because every time we shampoo our hair, it removes the oils that the hair depends on. This is probably why we have so many people balding, right? Like because we're just constantly removing the natural oils of our system. We're constantly cleaning out what makes us human, and in that sense, we cannot structure biologically in the correct natural way that life works. And if it's not, and if you say nah, that's some crazy mentality, well, welcome to the fucking jungle, man. Go into the woods and see how the tiger acts. Is he taking a shower? No. Well, maybe once a week he'll go to like the lake because he stepped on some shit or something. I don't know. I'm not a tiger. I'm not a bear. I don't know how they work, but I bet you they don't take shampoo showers. This is completely normal. This is a natural phenomena of existence. It's dirty. Human bodies are disgusting. Maintain them, clean them, but don't overdo it because somebody told you it was a good idea to wash your hair every day and put silicone on it to make it nice and luscious and then have to depend on that product continuously and waste money on shampoo and conditioner. Once I got out of that cycle, I wash my hair once a week. Once a week, maybe 2 times a week, depends if I go outside a bunch. If I go outside a bunch, then of course I'm gonna get all kinds of like sweat from moving and all the environmental particles and stuff, and I'm just gonna cleanse. But if I'm just working at home, working nothing, probably take about 2 weeks before I take a shower and not take a shower, clean my hair specifically. Oh, it's just a natural form, man. This is me coming from a farmer's lifestyle. My grandma has a farm, so I live on the farm as well. It's just how it works. Having perfection, having everything be perfect is a setback. Nothing's perfect. It's again, the only way you can overcome OCD is having acceptance. Having acceptance that we don't live in a perfect life, however perfectly we want it to be. We can't make the perfect code. We can't like if it's like tabs, I don't know if it's programming tabs, like make the tabs all perfect and whatnot. Yeah, I mean that's one thing that's very important in Python. But to have like a perfect everything, perfect, mm, it's beneficial in this case. Organization. You want to OCD on something, OCD on organizing your code, OCD on files, structures, that kind of stuff. When it comes to the writing of code, you're going to find the best method to do so. And remember, your OCD is perspective to what you think you know until you know something better, and all of a sudden, oh, my OCD was actually wrong. So in the coding space, accept the way the things are. But to appease your OCD, like once a month for me, maybe once every couple of weeks, I go through like a restructuring. Like I have a bunch of files everywhere, and I start clean. Like housekeeping on my computer. All of these files from all the students and screenshots that they've been sending in their own folder. And I can process them later, see if they're important for future classes, or I can just delete them so I don't have to worry about the space being taken. All the new pieces of code I've made go into this folder. All of the AI code go into that folder. Make it that productive. Organization is great for OCD, but hyperfixating on OCD and having to want things to be a specific way and not moving forward until they are that way, that's going to be bad. Here's a perfect example coming from like the educational environment. In mathematics, my students, I teach them test taking strategies. And I tell them, how do you do what's your strategy? Right? Think about it. When you take a test, what is your strategy to take that test? Some of them say, I don't have one. Others say, well, I go through and I see which ones are easy and I do those first. Good. Let's expand on that. That's actually a very good strategy. If you focus on the easy ones and skip the hard ones, that's going to break your OCD because your OCD is linear. It wants to make sure everything's perfect before it moves on to the next one, right? OCD. But what happens with that is you handicap yourself. You're not looking at the bigger picture. You're stuck on problem one. It could have been the hardest in the whole test, and it's taking you 30 minutes to finish. And now you're psyching yourself out. Holy crap, this test is hard because this one problem took me 30 minutes, but little do you know the last nine are actually going to be super easy. So instead of skipping the first one, doing the last nine and getting those done, you're psyched out because the first one was hard, therefore the second one's probably harder, right? That's just a self-psych out we do. So being able to release from that OCD, skip around, do the things that are important, focus on the small menial tasks, the easy ones, and then work your way up to the harder ones. This is what I tell students. You take your test 3 times. You do the easy run first, easy difficulty. If you can't start it in like 10 seconds, skip it. Go to the next one. Start it and do it for later. You do all the easy ones, and by the time you're finished with all the easy ones, you already got like a 60, 70% because the majority of the problems on the test are easy. And there's medium ones. You go back to the beginning. Where did you start? Do those. They'll take you another 15 minutes. 5 minutes for the easy, 15 for the medium. Now you're about a 80, 90% grade in 20 minutes of an hour test. And the hardest ones will be the last to do because now you know what the test looks like. You've seen all the parts. You're prepared for what they might be asking in a tricky hard problem because you kind of have an eagle eye view of the test itself. And you've given yourself 40 minutes to finish it. And even if you don't finish it, you got an 80, 90%, and you don't even care at that point. You're not psyching yourself out. You're full focused, and boom. I will give you an example. Like I set a schedule for a day. I will follow the schedule exactly until I don't. And just don't do anything the whole day. I do the same thing the next day. I'll give you an example. Like I set a schedule for a day. So if you finish all the things in your schedule and it's nothing left, you just don't do anything. Basically, your schedule is your main task list, and if you're finished with it early, you kind of just don't have anything else to do. Is that what I'm getting here? You can't think of anything else to add on, potentially have different levels of scheduling. Main tasks, side quests. You finish all your main tasks, go to your side quests. It'll expand your schedule. It'll give you something to look at and work on forward whenever you have the time. If your schedule is like working, cleaning, cooking, all that stuff, right? Like if I mess up my schedule even a little bit, I just dump the whole thing. Oh shit. If you really do so. Interesting. So improvising, adjusting to dynamics. Yeah, that's a fair point. That's a personal motivation factor. I start the next day again from the beginning. Give or take, not a horrible mentality. If like I was going through in the similar fashion, I was going through a program and I couldn't figure out what's going on with it, I'm not gonna keep fighting for 5 hours trying to figure it out. I'm gonna quit. I'm gonna quit and sleep on it. And I find that normally, if I can't fix a problem right now, because I've been programming for 3 or 4 hours, and I let it go, take a nap, come back, the next day, about 30 minutes, I figure out my problem because I have a refresh. I have a cleaner thinking process. So it is beneficial under certain situations. You don't want to like brute force exhaustion because of OCD, but also you don't want to give up. The reset day per day is not a bad thing. But like if we're talking about like, oh, morning, take shower, breakfast, make food, then go to work. If I forget to make breakfast and I don't go to work because that ruined my schedule, I just sit around do nothing all day. That's a problem. It's all about consequences of particular things happening. In programming, it's fine if I mess up something or I can't fix it and I wait till tomorrow. In the days aspect of it, hold on, why is that there? In the days aspect of it, there it is. Let me do this one. This is the chat room. Hmm. You find that you have failed or not done something, you quit. The OCD on their behalf, give me a second, I'm trying to put myself back on here. The OCD on their behalf is they don't stop until they get it right. You're adjusting to the apathetic version of that idea. See what I mean? Where am I? Where am I? Here's chat. You have to think of it in a different sense. You have to think of it if until I get it right, I don't stop OCD. Not if don't do it right, I just quit OCD. I mean, that would be also counter OCD, wouldn't it? OCD is a hyperfixation until something is absolutely perfect, versus completely shutting down if it's not perfect. There's a sense of psychological motivation missing here. Because two people would see that in a different sense. One person would say, I don't stop until I get it right. The other person, I can't get it right, so I'm just not going to do it. You see what I mean? It's kind of like a psychological adjustment. You have to program yourself, case in point, to tell yourself, I'm not going to stop until I get it right. Oh, I guess I was just invisible? Oh, there I am. Okay, cool. So that's my perspective on that. That's the case for, it's internal. You have to be the one that makes that choice. You're the one that guides that OCD. To some extent, I guess there's such certain like intensities of OCD that like you have to touch a doorknob 3 times to go through the door. I haven't experienced that, but I know it exists. At some point, you are kind of at a loss, but you still have a working battle to regain. For your case, it's the apathetic overcoming. Yeah. I mean, look, anytime you find something like this, the first step is yes, it's me. I have to adjust this. It's not biological, even though it is. OCD is a case for biological wiring, but biological wiring is done through habit, the way we've done things. So just because it's biological wiring doesn't mean we can't change our habits to change. You're looking till tomorrow or the next day, yeah, you can't change yourself. You're looking at 2 weeks, 2 months, 2 years, oh hell yeah, you can change yourself. It's just repetition. So anytime you see something you want to adjust, there's a form of repetition to change, whether it's repeating something, mantras, stuff like that, or acting on it repetitively. Doing something 5 minutes a day, easy to do, may not accomplish a lot in 5 minutes, but if you do it every day, you create a habit. Look at code for 5 minutes every day. Eventually it becomes 10 minutes and 15 minutes and 30 minutes and then an hour. I used to play games all the time. I would trade the market, make money, and then play games. But then I was like, wait a minute, what's the point in that? I played all these games and stuff, it's cool. So eventually I started taking game breaks because eventually I get fatigued and I just didn't care so much about the game, or I got tired of playing one game. So I'd go into programming mode. I take a game break to do some programming. This was like 5 or 6 years ago. And as it kept going, is it doing anything? Am I live? Is it? What the hell is YouTube doing? Drop frames. It says I'm not live at the moment, huh? How's it going? Did we get a hiccup here? I think we got a hiccup. Oh, my internet's a little funky, ain't it? Yeah, it looks a little funky. Stream health says healthy. Excellent. What the hell is that about? Disconnected. Oh, this is this. Oh, this has to do with that. Uh-huh. Probably that. Let me see. Yeah, I think it was. I was trying to use Rumble also, but Rumble has a really tricky streaming process. Anyway, habits are changed over time, and you're in control of those habits. So, for sure, first step to adjustment is acknowledging it. It's not a bad thing. A lot of people think weaknesses are to be frowned upon, but weaknesses don't become strengths until we recognize them and change them. So if you ignore a weakness all your life, you're never going to overcome it. That's the biggest psychological virtue there is, to understand how we can fault and how we can stop faulting. However, society is a little different in the way they teach it, huh? Yeah, dude, stay connected, join in. Oh, cool. I'll give you a shout out. Uh, Talk to me anytime there. I have students in the evenings. I'll probably be streaming at these times. This is the US mornings. Um, Europe's start evening. I'm not sure where you're from specifically, but this will be about the time I do some of these streams. Seems to be a good audience at this time. Otherwise, nice chat. Appreciate you. Thanks for joining. Hope to enlighten, help give motivation, because that's really the only thing we got, man. We got motivation. Once that's gone, it's like, what the hell do we even do? You know? But it's a self thing. Just basically giving yourself that motivation. Fuel your own growth. Don't let others fuel it or turn the fire off in your behalf. That's my quote of the day. Anyway, thanks for joining, buddy. And everyone else that was in the stream today, asking the questions. Had a good time. Enjoyed it. Love having the interactions. Keep coming in. Set the notifications. Join up. Have fun. Learn stuff. Mentally, what's it? Mentally, what's the word? Enlighten. Not enlighten. It's like that going up into the level. You know what I mean? Anyway, thanks for joining. I'll see you next time. Bye.